Hi, I'm Mrs. Mercer, Decatur Township District Reading Specialist, and I am here to teach your Sunday Level 8 Day 2 lesson for today. In the following slides, your child will find a letter and they are to give the sound as quickly as they possibly can without making an error. If your student does make an error, just say, "Let's trace." Then say, "This is the letter T," which says T, and then show the keyword slide that you'll see later in the video. And for T, it's turtle. And then you're going to have them trace T 3 times, saying, "T says T." And if you could get a textured surface, that's better, but whatever surface you can actually use right now is fine. T says T. T says T. T says T 3 times for any errors that they make. First one. So this one should be easy. They should get it. I'm going to go through quickly. Feel free to pause the video if your child needs more time to say a sound. Okay, so now we're to the spell sound section. If they were in class, students would have their student notebook, and this is where they would write the letters that correspond with the sounds I'm going to dictate. So I'm going to say a sound, and the learner is going to repeat this sound after they hear me say it, and then they are going to say and write it at the same time on this section or on a piece of paper at home. If they don't have paper, you could use the notes section in your iPad, or if your teacher uses Canvas and has this on there, they could also do that there. So the first sound I'm going to give you, you're going to repeat, and then you're going to repeat and write. Okay, there'll be several sounds. So listen. X. Repeat the sound. I'm sorry for the background noise. And then write and repeat the sound. Ah. P. Ah. R. D. I. Now, in this section, if your child makes an error, you could write. So write down what you saw that the error was. So you could write, "I see. I wanted D. Can you tell me what letter makes the D sound?" And hopefully they'll be like, "Oh, yeah," and they'll tell you D. And then, so you're like, "Yes, D says duh." If you didn't have D for duh, cross that out and write it correctly. Give them time for that, and then say, "Let's write it 2 more times for extra practice." Sorry, I'm trying to reach. I'm not writing very well. Try to also make sure, if you can, that your students start most of their letters from the top and go down. Okay, so that's how we'll do the error correction for this section. Okay? All right, so now the students are going to read one column of words from the next page. Make sure that they place their fingers underneath the word. Now, if they make an error in this section, you would say, let's trace. Make sure that they're looking at the word and have them trace each letter and say each sound while they blend, pulling from underneath. For example, say they made an error on the word hat. They need to be looking at the word hat and tracing at the same time. And then they're going to say, and then pull their fingers underneath, hat for the blending section of the sounds. And they're going to do that 3 times. Hat, hat. They will do that for a total of 3 times to help with that error correction and for automaticity. So pause the video at this section and make sure your child reads each of these words in this column. Make sure they put their finger under the words or a piece of paper to help guide them visually. Okay. Okay, and now we're going to the touch spelling section of the word. At this point, you could also ask, before you start this section, ask some questions. And one of the questions, since it's a newer concept that I might ask in this section, would be, how do you spell a, long A at the end of the word? And hopefully they will give you A-Y. So yes, when you hear long A at the end of the word, it's most commonly spelt A-Y. Okay? So this is the touch spelling portion. You probably have seen me do this many a times if you have done several lessons with me, but I'm going to repeat this because somebody might just be starting on this slide. So just another example of touch spelling. If you're right-handed, you would have your pencil in your right hand and you'd use your left to do the touch spelling. And you would start with your pinky, just like words go from left to right. That's how we want to touch spell. So for tan, they would repeat tan, and then they would go and then they would do it again and write at the same time. If they were lefty, this is much harder for me to show because I'm holding the board and doing all that. They would write with their left hand, and then they would touch spell They would start with their thumb so that we follow the left to right sequence of the words of our language. Okay? Sorry about that. Okay, so for spell words, I'm gonna give you a word. The learner will repeat the word, touch spell the word, then touch spell and write at the same time. And this would go in this section of the student notebook. Okay, so listen carefully. Fun. Repeat fun, touch spell fun, touch spell and write fun. You will follow that pattern for the rest of the words that I give. Feel free to pause the video if you need more time for each word. Lay, jog, rim, van, rug, day, rot, tip, and am. Okay, pause, make sure you give yourself enough time to write all the words. Now we're going to check to see if you did them correctly. Now, you're going to check your words on your paper. If you made an error, just cross it out, don't erase. Then write it 3 times correctly for extra practice. First word, fun. If you did not have fun, make sure that you cross it out and write it correctly 3 times. Lay, jog, rim, van, rug, day, rot, tip, am. Okay, so now we're into the spell words, phrases, and sentences section. This is where you'll write. I'm going to give you a sentence. The learner will repeat the sentence. They will tap one word per finger of the sentence, and then they're going to write the sentence. So for this, they would write, the sentence I'm going to give you is, the pup. Well, I don't want to say it word by word. The pup is in the box. And so they are going to tap it out. The pup is in the box. Now, if you run out of fingers, go back to your pinky. The pup is in the box. Okay? We don't want to say it word by word. We want to say it as a complete sentence. Then after they tap each word for the sentence, then they're going to tap each word and write the sentence. They're going to do that for both sentences. I'll repeat again. The pup is in the box. Pause. Tap the sentence, then tap and write the sentence. Pause the video to get this done. Next sentence. Pat can hug the pup. Repeat, Pat can hug the pup. Then tap, Pat can hug the pup. Then tap and write, Pat can hug the pup. You will probably need to pause the video to give yourself time to write this. Okay, now make sure that you use the correct capitalization and punctuation for each sentence. Check your sentences now. Okay, now we're going to check them together. You should have had, the pup is in the box. You should have had a period at the end and a capital T at the beginning, and the correct spellings. Second one, Pat can hug the pup. Capital P, period at the end, and then the correct spellings for the words. Check your sentences. If you made an error, cross it out and then write it correctly above or below the word, depending on what room you have on your paper. Pause the video if you need to do any corrections now. Now we're on to the new learning. Okay, so today we have the double E. EE is the first choice for the long sound of E in the middle of a word. So if you hear E in the middle of the word, the first choice, not the only choice, but the first choice is double E. So it's most commonly spelled with a double E if you hear that in the middle of a word. So say that with me. Double E or EE is the first choice for the long sound of E in the middle of a word. Repeat that. Okay? So we're not going to say all that when we do our tracing. If you want to try, you can, but I think it might be a bit confusing. Okay? So you're going to say E says E in the middle of a word. You're going to trace that 3 times. E says E in the middle of a word. E says E in the middle of the word. You're going to want to do that 3 times, tracing on whatever surface you have available. The rougher, the better. The key word for EE is feet. Can you say feet? Okay. So now in the introduce new material, I want you to write EE while saying EE says E in the middle of a word each time right here in this section. Pause the video to give yourself time to write. EE says E in the middle of the word 3 times. Okay. Now you're going to need to pause probably again. The learner is going to read the words from the word book. If you feel that more than one column is too much, then just read 1 column at a time. If you feel like your student needs to repeat the lesson, you could switch things up by having them do one column one day, the 3rd column the next day, so it's not completely repetitious. Okay. Pause and read. Okay, now we're going to dictate some words, and you're going to write these words down here, and they're going to have our new material in them. So I'm going to say the word, The learner will repeat the word, they're going to touch spell the word, and then they're going to say each sound out loud while writing it on paper. Now, when we have two letters that make one sound, we just use one finger for that because the student should know that the EE makes the E sound in the middle of the word. So, for example, if we had, we'll do the first one together. Meet. Repeat, meet. I meet him at the store. Then they would go e t, meet. So they would know that the middle finger, when you hear E in the middle of the word, you spell it with two E's. And then they would write it on paper. Okay? Second word, feed. They would repeat feed, touch spell feed, touch spell and write feed. You may need to pause the video on each word given. Seed. Feet. Seam. Deep. Pause the video to give your learner enough time to write the words. Now we're going to check the words. Check and see if you wrote the words correctly. If you did not, cross them out and write them 3 times correctly if you have room. If not, at least 1 time. Then I want the learner to read these words out loud to you. So pause the video, have them read each of these words out loud. Okay? Now for the read aloud section. Okay, pause the video and have your child read this section, this paragraph out loud. And that's the end of the lesson.